the first thing is to say I've just come back literally yesterday from time in Nigeria and Ghana and Kenya to try and understand the adoption of blockchain-enabled technologies across sub-Saharan Africa. And I came very skeptically. I came skeptically not of Africa, but skeptical of blockchain technologies, because the most compelling use cases in the West seem to be around speculation, both at the top and the bottom of the market. Blockchain has been called in the West a solution awaiting a problem. That's not really what I've encountered in Nigeria and Ghana and Kenya. I found real problems and some real solutions where blockchain seemed to be the only thing. So I'm going to deal with some of those first. The most compelling use case that I've seen is international payments, and actually not just international payments, but mobile money integration, mobile money being a really clear example of an African leading technology. Back, from 2006-07, the advent of M-Pesa with Safaricom in Kenya, it still leads the West in terms of mobile money integration. So actually having blockchain technologies which not just allow international transfer, cash transfer from the West to sub-Saharan Africa, and then intra-African money transfer, really gets rid of a lot of problems. And blockchain-enabled technologies, for example, send cash in Nigeria and then yellow card all over, basically that solves a real problem, and so it allows people to not just trade crypto as people do in the West, but to trade full stop, be that for creative products and services like artwork, be that for services that people can offer like web development or even the creation of services like graphic design. The next area I'm going to deal with, which I think is really interesting, is I'm going to broadly call it transparency. And when I talk about transparency, this is about kind of accountability as well. And what blockchain technology can do is it can enable people to be able to hold and track, for example, ownership. And this is important in areas like property, where proving the ownership of property can be, very difficult. It can be held only on an oral agreement or something like that, and actually, so having something like putting your property deeds on a blockchain, where they're immutable, where they can be instantly accessible, that stuff is very exciting. So, businesses like House Africa that Mambi Uba created in Nigeria, I think that those things are the future. Those are really, really exciting. And you can see instantly with that, this idea of proving and tracking ownership has got almost universal applications. Once again, in in sub-Saharan Africa, where both you have infrastructural frailty in terms of the judiciary, in terms of the legal system, and the ability to track ownership and payments. You can see this also in the creative sector, working for intellectual property too. The next area I'm excited by, and I think is really interesting, is networking, innovation and education. These aren't necessarily blockchain enabled, but they are nonetheless exciting ways of bringing creatives together. And so I'm sure you all know about the AfriLabs network. AfriLabs is it's a network organization supporting innovation centers across 51 countries in Africa. And I was like, well, actually, when I met Nekesa Weri in Nairobi, who's the head of strategy at AfriLabs, I said, it would be quicker just to tell us the 4 countries you're not in, So, it's these hub service kind of centers that provide support for African entrepreneurs, innovators, developers, and youth. And with that sort of networking, you know, that is massively, massively powerful. And so it's like a network and a network of networks. So the ability to basically cross-pollinate ideas, knowledge sharing, creativity, skills. This is something which is really, really going to be massively important for Africa in the future. And as Rimini alluded to, the ability to do that in the creative sector is massively important. The other one I went to, I went again to MEST, to the Meltwater organisation in Accra. What that's great for is education of tomorrow's entrepreneurs. So, you know, MEST has got this year-long, full-time, fully sponsored intensive program to create entrepreneurs in training, and they then can graduate and get, you know, help and seed capital and be incubated. And so being able to help and capacity build entrepreneurs, creative entrepreneurs like that is massively, massively important. The next last two areas I'm going to deal with. One is value in supply chain, being able to not just improve value in supply chain, but shorten it as well. You know, Africa is a resource-rich continent which has suffered at the hands of very often the West, in terms of middlemen, and they normally are men, taking disproportionate amounts of the proceeds of producers' wealth, and this goes, you know, pretty much with almost any resource. The organisation or the business Twigger Foods, TWGIA Foods, I'll put that in the chat as well. It's fascinating. What they do is they simplify the supply chain between fresh food producers, manufacturers and retailers through a B2B e-commerce platform. And that removes the need for many intermediaries who normally they're kind of, and it significantly works on both sides. It significantly lowers the cost of food for consumers, and it increases the margins for the food producers themselves. And they do that by basically creating a longer value chain. So whereas if you're like a lady selling bananas, in the old days used to go and any rotten bananas they'd throw away. And so Africa's got an incredible, you know, food waste proportion of about 45-50%. Whereas if you had a service that basically created a longer value chain and they said, no, that's okay, we'll take those bananas that you don't sell back and we can basically turn them into banana bread, or we can use them as an ingredient in soap or whatever. You basically elongate that value chain and you cut the cost. That sort of stuff is massively important. And the last thing, of course, is not at an individual level. It's at a business, it's at a policy level. I think that with the African Union and the idea of creating a free trade area across Africa, that's massively important, and that's going to need policy innovation. I was lucky enough to meet with Professor Butangi Ndemo from the University of Nairobi, who is the senior advisor to the Kenyan government and other governments as well on ICT. And Professor Ndemo's latest report into blockchain and AI is absolutely great. It's a really, really pivotal piece of work. And if all you really need to know about Professor Ndemo is he was the architect of the Kenyan ICT report in 2007 that basically led to the explosion of mobile money across the continent. So that's some of the stuff that's interesting me. And you can see it goes right from the top of policy all the way down to the bottom to real grassroots education and grassroots support.